Hi, I'm Liz Cully, and welcome back to Cool, Cool, Cool. Each week, I give you a glimpse into what I think is cool and chat with a ton of people that are definitely cool. No topic is off bounds unless, I guess, it's not cool. Welcome to Cool, Cool, Cool. I was just telling you that my friend Candy, who promises that she's going to listen to the podcast, was
Hi, Candy.
Hi, Candy, was just gobsmacked when I said that you were my guest today. And I was gobsmacked because your background, we'll get to you being the Adele of, I feel like Celine Dion of narration on podcasting. I don't know you at all, but I don't know. It just like fits for me better.
I think it's the alliteration of Adele. The Adele of Audiobooks had a certain alliteration that the New Yorker liked, I think.
Well,
so I take it.
I'll take it. Having just worked at Condé Nast for many years and with all the folks from the New Yorker, they do love alliteration over there. So, and I thought that was a great article, by the way. I read it and I loved it. And what I came across, and that's why I want to talk a little bit about your child acting or really teenage acting background before we get into you being the Adele of audiobooks.
Yes.
Is that you were so like chill. You were so cool in that New Yorker article. I always love it when people curse in big profiles.
When we were doing, so the writer of that is fantastic. And I had actually recorded one of her articles when I was working at and for a company called Autumn, which put long form journalism on audio, which was then acquired by New York Times and kind of like now has been subsumed by New York Times Audio. So I had recorded one of her pieces, which was about like hunting with these MAGA women hunters. And it was fantastic. It was an incredible piece. But so I definitely felt, very friendly. And then when they called to, the New Yorker was going through their fact checking, and even just the sort of hints I was getting from there, like, did you actually say this? Did this actually happen? And I was like, oh God, like it all went in there.
I would also just like to say we love fact checking. So
yeah, what a concept.
What a concept. Could you imagine?
No, I know. One of the things that just has gone completely away in the collapse of media in general.
Well,
so I appreciate they still do it.
I mean, same. And they really do take it seriously because, like I said, I very recently worked there and I am very well aware of across all of Condé brands. And they did not pay me to say this because let me tell you, they didn't.
They don't pay.
Let me tell you, they did not. They did not. So I have a fascination with child actors that actually make it because I was a child theater actor in San Francisco at ACT. Everybody said I had so much promise. I really believed that I should be on Kids Incorporated or the Disney Channel. Like I was like, this is it. Take me to Orlando. Ironically, my parents now live in Florida, but they were like, get fucked. We could care less, like be in the mountain, play in Marin. But you actually did the thing that was the most incredible, which is you were on a major ABC show that was created by just a casual duo that did My So-Called Life,
right.
Which like Jordan Catalano forever.
Yeah.
Once and again. And you were really the star of that show at 15. What? This is such an inside baseball nerdy question, but I have to know, what was the like audition process like? Were you doing pilot seasons?
Yeah.
Or okay.
So first of all, I'm going to stand here. This is the fact checking. We're starting to fact check. Let's not say I was the star of that show. I think I was 6th on the call sheet. Let's just...
Okay, fine. You're on my show. Okay, first of all, you're on my show, and my fact checking is to me. You were the star.
Okay, right. Okay, fair. Yeah, iconic show, legendary showrunners and creators, and those guys are just so smart and incredible people. And it was like a perfect experience for me. And they were writing stuff for me to do that like people did, especially at that time. I think we're looking back now at how shitty media was for women and like teenagers at that time, right? And we're like reevaluating a lot of the way that we treated some of those women. And it was bad out there. It was bad out there for child actors. It was bad out there. There was just, and I was one of those, I was super nerd who like was totally in it for the writing and the acting and didn't care about all the other stuff and the trappings. And so to be able to be on a show where they were just writing gold for me every week, like, ruined me for everything else. I mean, it was just incredible. Okay, the audition process. I remember that process actually very, very vividly because I was 14, I think, when I read the pilot, and I said, this is absolutely incredible. I've been reading a lot of pilots for a very long time, and I could tell that this was really good. There were a few auditions, and then we got to callbacks, and then I lost it, which I think the New Yorker article went into, because that was one thing where I was like, I'm not going to confirm this unless you can get independent confirmation. I don't want to be the person who says this, but then they did, which is that it went to Scarlett Johansson, and she had just done, I don't know, maybe Horse Whisperer, and so it was like a real star cast for them. And I don't know what happened other than I think the realities of, oh wait, if I sign on to do a network television show, they're going to take up 6 years of my life. Yeah. I maybe don't want to do this. They came to me and they said, do you want to play her friend? Like one of the best friends on the show. And I stuck to my guns and I said, no, like, this is my role. I appreciate the offer. I hope there's something for us to like do later, but I'm not going to take the role. I just had this sense. I've never had this again ever since, but I just had this sense that it wasn't over.
Wow. That's wild.
And then when she left the project, Ed Zwick and Marshall Herskovitz called me in and they said, we're going to do a test, but at this point it's a formality. And I went in just with them and they just recorded me. There was no studio brass, no network brass. They had that kind of power then. And they just said, we're sending them the tape the way we want it. And it was incredible. And then I went from that test right to the set of ER and filmed a like scene for that. And it was a very surreal day.
Well, first of all, I love a 14-year-old girl that just like knows her gut. I was one of those girls too, where I was like, I know I'm destined for big things, like living in Glendale. And I love that though. There are these few moments when you just know something is right or isn't right. And I love that at 14, you're like, no, I'm not going to play second fiddle. Like, this is not it. And I love that. And Scarlett Johansson is a child actor that I bring up often because she's also a twin. So she has two things that I'm absolutely fascinated by, which is being a twin, which seems completely insane. And then being a child actor, which is, respectfully, I say this to you, you ended up going to school. You now, seem like a very fully formed person. But anytime somebody's being weird in Hollywood, I'm like, child actor. And it's typically true.
Yeah, it is typically true. Yeah.
And I say this with love because, and I can't mention the actor's name, but we all grew up with her on television. I'll just say that. And she was very famous in the 90s. And now she's, in her 50s and whatever. And I made the comment recently, I'm like, God, she's really hard to get to know. And she doesn't do the things like acknowledge people in a room, which really gets my goat, if you will. And a friend of mine was like, well, yeah, she and I were speaking about it, but it's like, I had asked, oh, did you do this in school or did you do this? And she's like, I never went to school. I like literally went to set every day. And I feel badly. That's why I say, if I ever kind of ingest, say, oh God, they're a child actor, I say it with love because there's so many things that you missed. And I think it's really cool. Like, I think the best scenario would be dropping into peak 90s, early aughts, like ABC television, dipping out of Hollywood. You know
absolutely.
What I mean? Like, you kind of did it the right way.
It was perfect. It was all pre-social media. I didn't have to deal with any of that. I was on a great show. I got to lead a pretty normal life because it wasn't a massive, we had like our kind of culty fans who were amazing, but it wasn't like doing crazy numbers where, I was just like hounded or something. I mean, I would be recognized on the street. Everyone was always very respectful. I never had to do the publicity stuff and social media didn't exist. It was like, for me, the introvert that I am, it was the perfect situation.
Why do you think is it still not available for streaming?
Yeah, and I don't know. And I don't think, because people ask me this, because I think I'm the most accessible out of all of our former cast members. So I get this question a lot and I don't have an answer. And then I saw an interview that I think Kate did with maybe Evan over
I
at
think it was Evan.
Variety.
Yeah.
And I guess they finally asked Ed, and he was like, I don't know. And I was like, if Ed Zwick doesn't know why we're not streaming, I have no answers for you.
Well, all I can say is this. I can't promise anything, but Disney's been my client for a very long time. And please believe maybe I'll ask that next time I see some higher ups. I'll be like, just put this on Hulu.
Please do. Please do. I think it has to do, who knows? I'm not going to second guess this. There's so many theories about why, but it's not the only show. There's a vacuum of those shows from late 90s, early aughts that just aren't anywhere. And so I don't know what that is.
Which is a bummer for me because I went to boarding school at that time and I didn't watch television between 1999 and then I went to New York. So I missed, I've never watched Gilmore Girls, ever. I've never watched Grey's Anatomy. I've never watched Dawson's Creek. I've never, there are these shows that people will bring up, cultural moments, zeitgeisty thing, whatever. And I'm just like, no, I got nothing for you.
This one holds up. I've seen a couple of the episodes that are on YouTube and I'm always just impressed. It really does hold up. It was a really smart, forward-thinking, good show.
Yeah, I mean,
objectively.
Yeah. And then you went and did 15 and Pregnant, which is like...
I did 15. Oh my God, wow. I did 15 and Pregnant first, I think.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, really that's classic.
It is.
Classic television.
It really is.
It's so good. I mean, also would be a very interesting, I don't know, to take your experience in early aughts, kind of these classic, these shows, and maybe make it into a book. I don't know. Maybe that's one of your next book.
Oh, I know. People ask me that all the time. I was so boring. I just wasn't that interesting. If I wasn't on set, I was reading. I was just not, I don't think there's much to talk about. I would like to fictionalize, though, a set. I've been playing around with that idea a little bit, like a kind of TV show and then a 20-year reunion sort of thing. I'd like to maybe novelize that, but I don't have any interest in doing memoir. It just wasn't that interesting. I went to work, I came home.
Yeah, but it would be interesting to novelize because they've done some, I'm trying to think of the show that came out actually on Hulu not that long ago and it had Johnny Knoxville on it and it was a show that had been big and they all came back. It was one season. I'll remember it. I didn't prepare myself for this. So
no, well, so Katie Cotugno, who's an amazing writer, wrote this delicious book called Birds of California, and I narrated it, and that kind of got me back into it because she, first of all, she writes actors so well. She's one of my favorite writers, but she had written this as kind of sort of based on the relationship that I actually had on Once and Again with the stepbrother character. And so she had sort of taken that dynamic and then built this and then made the show sort of like Seventh Heaven, that sort of feeling.
Wow.
And it's just so good. And as I was recording it, I was like, God, maybe I do need to tell my own version of this type of story. So we'll see.
I would totally read and then listen to you narrate that book. So I'm ready for it.
But I'd totally forgotten about 15 and Pregnant until someone tagged me in a TikTok video where there was a clip from my ER episode, which was kind of at the time a little bit, people had opinions, and now that their social media exists, people can still have opinions. And it was a 14-year-old who finds out she's pregnant, and it was the Christmas episode, and it was whether I'm going to have an abortion, and I'm Catholic, and my mom would kill me, and that's the scene, right? And so someone had, on this post, someone had commented, and then she plays the sister on 15 and Pregnant who's judging her sister for getting pregnant. I was like, well, at the time, I had not put that together, that those two characters were in direct contrast to each other. I had not put that.
I think, Julia, it's called range.
Yes, so much range.
Well, I die because when I kind of started to peter out in my audition life, I got a call back and an audition to play one of those true crime, awful ID network where it's somebody dies and then they get someone to look like that person. And I did 2 callbacks, one of which was in this weird strip mall on Santa Monica across from from the World Market, if you're familiar,
sure,
near the Century City Mall. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I went upstairs and went into this weird room. I'm like, maybe they're trying to scare me so that I really get into character because I feel like I'm low-key gonna die. I was like on top of some like shady tax place and like a printing, like who gets things printed like that? Anyway, but I didn't make it, and I still think about that. And I was only gonna make like $1,500, but to be a person double on the ID network,
In a
top tier.
reenactment.
Well, and Law and Order. I still have hope that I could be on Law and Order. I really do. I don't even act anymore. I don't even act anymore.
But surely they're running out of people. Like,
I know.
that show's been on so long, they've got to start reaching down to, okay, we've run through all of the actors. Let's go back to the people who quit acting at some point. I feel like that's our destiny for both of us, yeah.
I want to talk about your first audiobook.
Okay.
Like, how did it come about? Were you scared? Were you like, whatever? Talk me through it.
Okay. One of my best friends in college, her mother was an audiobook director and producer. So she's actually the one who came up to me at my college graduation and said, you have this creative writing degree. You were a child actor. Have you ever thought about doing audiobooks? And I had no idea what an audiobook even was. But I put together a demo for her and I was like, so I just read the book? Like, I perform the book? Like, that sounds great. So she cast me, after I submitted the demo, she cast me in 2 books. I went out to Michigan to record them. That's where the studios were. And it was just a fish to water situation. Like, I'd never felt more comfortable doing anything in my life. It was easy it was incredibly difficult to learn how to do, but the just dropping into a job and hitting the ground running, it just felt right from the beginning. And then I had to figure out how to do it.
What are the hardest things you had to learn about it?
There's a focus required that's really underappreciated. Like, there's no fewer than 4 things happening in your brain at the same time, because as you're reading, and granted, you've read the book ahead of time, right? So you've created your character roster, you've got all of your pronunciations, you know the book, you know where you're going. But the things that are happening simultaneously is, obviously, you're trying to read the text, letter perfect. You are looking ahead at the next sentence for any words that are going to jump out at you or anything that is going to come at you, or who the next piece of dialogue is from. So you're doing that calculus in your head while you're reading aloud, and then you're also reminding yourself to make it a dynamic listen for the listener. Like, don't get monotone, switch up rhythm. So you've got like kind of all of these aspects happening at the same time, and that focus required. I have never been, when I first started this job, I'd never been so brain tired at the end of a day. Like, I just felt like that spinning wheel buffering thing was happening.
The pinwheel of death on a computer.
Not to mention, obviously, the vocal strain of, you know, when you're switching between, which is a thing you never have to do on camera, when you're switching between accents and characters and range, those are muscles you've like never worked. And so your voice gets a workout.
I bet. I mean, are you now like giving tour riders when you go into studios? You're like, I must have this kind of tea, water. I would assume you've given up dairy at this point.
I give up dairy on my record days. Yeah. No, I mean, look, I don't do diva stuff, and I also record from home, so I can have whatever I want in my studio.
Fair enough, which is amazing.
It's just a lot of water and tea and green apples.
What? Why?
Yeah. No one knows. Green apples really clear up mouth noise. They just,
Like, is it better if they're really puckering sour?
Not necessarily. No, just a good solid green apple will really clean things up for you.
You know,
My tip to you. Free tip.
I did not expect that. I love that. Well, you're also a writer as well. So was recording audiobooks, obviously you're an avid reader. You're probably the most well-read person I've ever spoken to in my life, if ever. And then you wrote your hit My Oxford Year, which, by the way, I also had an Oxford year, and I got my belly button pierced and drank beer for the first time. I went to Corpus Christi school for acting when I was like a kid, and got my belly button pierced at 13, which I actually just took out, if you can believe this, my nose ring and my belly button ring. It was just me and Britney Spears holding on strong.
Yeah, right.
After, I'm almost 40, and I got them both at 13.
Wow.
So, well, and
that
my
is
nose ring at
impressive.
15, my belly button at 13. But yes, I loved being in Oxford, except I found the food not so great. But you wrote my Oxford year and then you narrated it. Was that a really, like when you were writing the book, did you already think about how you were going to narrate it and
No, this is part of actually a problem I'm learning that I need to be better about. But because I was a writer before I started doing this job, I still think of books as books. And so I write them as books. And I don't think about performance until ridiculously late in the process, which always bites me in the ass every single time. Part of my editorial process is I read the book out loud. So I've read the book out loud, looking for rhythm and pacing and typos and all of that. But I'm not thinking about performance. Like, I'm not thinking about actual characterizations. So with my Oxford year, I did, in that I started the process early. I worked with a dialect coach that I'd actually worked with on a Hallmark movie years before, because I said, I need to, like, I can get away with, my English accent is passable, but there's like 13 different British characters in here, and I really want to differentiate them and, bring them to life. So I worked with him on the accents before I started recording, but so much energy went into that I just did not think about how I was actually going to perform it. And I certainly didn't account for the debut imposter syndrome that was going to hit me so hard while I was recording it, and agonizing over every terrible sentence that I was like, why did I write it like this? When I direct audiobooks, especially like celebrities or people who are writing a memoir, I will tell people this can be a triggering kind of experience when you're recording your audiobook, because you're like, I'm so done with this story. I've read a million drafts. I've edited it. But it's usually the first time that it occurs to you other people are going to be consuming this. Like, you are performing for other people at this point. And something in your brain flips and you start getting every little insecurity you've been able to repress or ignore during this process just comes to the surface. So yeah, recording my Oxford year was not a joyous experience, and I still have not listened to that book.
The accents are an interesting thing because they really bring you in when you're listening, obviously, to an audiobook. It differentiates characters. As you said, you wanted to make sure the dialects were right. Michelle Williams reading Britney Spears's memoir, which I listened to, I thought she did this brilliant, I don't even know if it's an accent, but it almost sounded like Britney Spears, but it didn't feel like a caricature or a character of Britney Spears. I mean, I know it got some press when she did the Justin Timberlake kind of, which was insane. I mean, it was very funny. But what do you think about celebrities playing celebrities in memoirs and trying to kind of bring you into that? It felt a little meta. I don't know. This question isn't that thought out. I can't. Listening to it, people commented about her accent. I actually thought she did this brilliant nod to her without trying to be her, if that makes sense.
I think that's the strategy. I think that's what you kind of need to do. That makes sense to me. I think the added layer of complication here is that when it's a celebrity reader and they have such a known profile, see, part of the luxury of being a yeoman audiobook narrator, right, is that people don't have a larger sense of my personality or who I am. So I'm able to kind of disappear into the text, where when you have someone like Michelle Williams, they're going to have something to compare it to. They're going to be like, oh, she's doing a thing here. She's doing a character. She's doing the Britney character. And that's a dynamic. That's an interesting choice. But I haven't listened to it, but she's so good. I can only imagine that it was good.
The only thing I can tell you is that I heard a rumor that the book itself went through 4 different ghostwriters. And if you listen, and I didn't read it, I just listened to it. It's quite short and it's fine. But the story, it's almost like on a Westworld loop. Not to bring up your former co-star, but there you go.
Okay. I love her.
But you can tell that she told the story multiple times. Do you know what I'm saying? You can actually feel that. And that's not Michelle's fault. That's nobody's fault. It's just an observation from listening to it. You're like, wait, no, I absolutely heard you say this before, but in a slightly different way. But I think what it did, which is really cool, is that for the folks that maybe never thought about listening to a book or wasn't privy to the business of audiobooks, I think it garnered a really big audience because it's Britney Spears and there were so many buzzy
Yeah. I do wonder, though, I want to know everything actually about that casting process, like
Me
who
too.
they were thinking of and, what decision was made. And if Britney actually said, I would love to get, I don't know what their relationship is, but it's an odd choice in that it's not in any way instinctive or instinctual, but at the same time, kudos, way to think outside the box. Smart.
It's completely random, actually, I would argue. I would argue that it actually makes fundamentally no sense to have Michelle Williams, on paper.
Right. How did it happen? Right.
Something that I talk about a lot on this show and when I'm interviewed is really kind of the business of the business, right? And bringing people in. I think with social media and so much information, a lot of folks that have nothing to do with entertainment are far more privy to the inner workings of the business than they were before, especially artists and payment and residuals and how they're treated. I just had a very, very dear and old friend of mine, Bonnie McKee, on my show where we talked about, her life and career as a songwriter, literally writing some of the biggest songs in the world and how the payment structure, especially with streaming, has impacted her. And you've created Audiobrary. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you're right. It's like library. You're good.
The way that I panicked this morning. And my wife came in and I was at the dining room table at 7 a.m. I was like, Audiobrary, a library, Audiobrary. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm like, I'm interviewing a really smart woman.
It's my new warm-up. It's my new vocal warm-up.
Audiobrary, which is the company that you have started.
Yeah.
And if I don't want to put words in your mouth and I don't want to summarize it wrong, but can you talk to me about why you started the company and how you're using it to bring to light payment of folks like yourself?
Absolutely. Happily. Gladly. This is what I do now. So, a problem in audiobooks, in my opinion, is that narrators are not paid appropriately for them, considering how much money audio makes. Traditional audio publishers made $2 billion last year in audio. It's the only part of publishing that's reliably in the black. And our rates, union rates, luckily, for audiobook narrators are about... And
really, can I stop you really quickly? Is it SAG union or what union? It's
SAG-AFTRA, yeah.
It is SAG.
Yeah. And we had to spend, look, we've been organizing for 10 years, getting everybody under a contract, any publisher, any audio production company. This has been a concerted effort to just get it unionized. And I think part of the problem is that in doing that, we didn't have enough forward thinking. No one thought this would become a huge, huge industry. But union rates are such that I would have to do 70 books a year at the union minimum to keep my head above water as a narrator. And narrators, the biggest problem, and this is why I started Audiobrary, is that narrators get no royalties. So unlike on camera, where of course you get residuals, same union, get residuals. And in publishing, which is a royalties-based business model, we don't get any royalties through publishing. So my villain origin story is that, I always say this glibly, but I was paid $2,500 for Gone Girl 12 years ago.
Which is wild, by the way.
Yeah. So there came a point in my career, at least in the last 5 years, where I was very lucky to be doing these incredible books that would get a ton of attention and become bestsellers. And I had no way to monetize that. It didn't matter to me. I had no back end. And yet I would be out there selling these books. I would be promoting them with the authors. And also not just that, but people, to Candy's point,
I'm dead. I'm dead about Candy.
People will put my name into Audible and listen to the things I record, and they find books through narrators. And this isn't just me, right? People find books through narrators. And as it gets harder and harder as an author to have discoverability for your book, a lot of book review sites have closed down. There's not a lot of literary criticism anymore. everything is so diluted. There's so much media. How do you get an audience for your book? Well, you can borrow your audiobook narrator, but that narrator is getting nothing for it. So after years of asking corporations to do the right thing, I gave up and was like, well, I'm either going to just get out of the industry or I'm going to have a Hail Mary, like one last chance to fix it thing. And so I started Audiobrary, which is not only an audio publishing company, so we acquire rights from authors to do audio for them, and we then pay the narrators a royalty. But I also created a direct-to-consumer distribution channel. So Audiobrary is also an app, and you order the projects online on our website. You listen to them through the app. And in doing that, these books we're distributing wide as well. We're going to be distributing wide as well, so you can find them anywhere. But there will always be some kind of special feature about the Audiobrary editions, like interviews with the author and the narrator. And by selling it directly, we are also taking back some of the distribution problem in this industry, which is that the larger platforms take up at least 50% of every sale sold.
And I think, thank you. I really am glad I did not try to summarize all of that. But what I love about it, and when I learned about what you were doing, instantly I was like, oh my God, like I'd be honored to have her on my show. Obviously, the voice of Gone Girl. Like, what are we even talking about right now? But I'm 15 and pregnant, like, but
range.
Honestly, babe, that's your next book. Range. But I don't think people understand how difficult it is to make a living creating content and how much content we all consume.
Yeah.
And, I had a situation recently where I randomly introduced myself to the head of product at Patreon, which I'm on Patreon, and, I try to make exclusive content, really bring people in more into my life. And that takes time. That takes work. Editing this show, I pay for someone to do this. Like, this equipment costs a lot of money. I'm very vain. So every time I record in person, I got to do my makeup, like all of these things. And also, not to relay this back to the strikes, but I had to explain to a lot of folks, like, you are not understanding that our entire town runs on entertainment, from food delivery, Uber, security. Everyone was massively impacted. And, again, to your point, when you guys were doing your SAG-AFTRA deal, you couldn't foresee the audiobook industry. Well, people didn't understand what streamers were going to do
exactly.
either.
And we're always a day late and a dollar short on these things. And the corporations have just zero incentive to change. Why would they? They've gotten away with not paying audiobook narrators well, or royalties. It's been fine. It works for them. What incentive do they have to change it? Absolutely nothing. So I'm going directly to the consumer, and I am saying to the fans, hey, you don't know this because you would assume we get royalties. Why wouldn't you? Which is true. Whenever I say this, like, I can watch people, the top
I did
of
it
their
with
head
Candy this morning. At Pilates. I said she doesn't make any residuals, so she started this amazing company. She goes, what? That was my impression of you, Candy. But you know what I mean? It's so obscene. I mean, I'm going to get the number wrong. And again, forgive me if I'm wrong. Please fact check me, someone. But Snoop Dogg was recently interviewed and talking about residuals on Spotify specifically. And I believe he got 200 billion downloads of his song and it wasn't even a year. It was like a few months. And that ended up equating to about $30,000, which, listen, $30,000 is a lot of money.
I see. That just makes me so angry. It makes me so angry.
But that doesn't actually make sense. And then you strip it down and it's like, I come back to this idea that we have to continuously make so much content. The studios can't make all of the content, period, point blank.
No.
And the way that we consume content is completely different now. I mean, I doom scroll and I love watching people like fall down or get hit, or I call them funny. I just love it. It like soothes my soul and puts me to bed. If it's a child, even better. Like, I don't know. It's just what I'm into.
Toddlers falling is like one of my favorite genres. Yeah. Okay.
Truly,
Yeah.
And so but like somebody's mom had to put their kid on the internet. Like, I'm just saying it's just gotten to the point with the advertising. Like, it's never going to stop. It's only going to get worse. But us as a global consumer economy have to fucking pay.
No,
like,
and I think that's the turning point for me is like artists, I mean, I've had so many conversations with narrators who don't even understand how publishing works. Like, they don't even understand the way the money works in the industry they work in, because we are actors. We are told that this is a SAG-AFTRA contract. We are told act, and it is the job between action and cut. When we're performing the book, we are acting, but the business we are in is publishing, and it works differently, and it has different rules. And the money, you have to understand where the money goes and just how much money these people are making, which is part of, I think, my privilege of having been a traditionally published author of 2 books is I get to see my royalty statements that most people would not have access to, right? So I am understanding this. And when I really started seeing that and seeing going to go back to the New Yorker article, I made a joke that I was like, my father, if he were living, this would be his favorite interview, because it's me cursing about labor practices.
I love it.
And that was his, I come from like labor organizers, the family of labor organizers. And this is the stuff that just really activates me. We have to stop doing this. And that's what I mean by when you start talking directly to fans and you explain to them that I'm so glad you love this book. I'm so glad that you have bought it in all the different formats and you listen to it 7 times a year. And I love it too. And just so you know, I'm getting nothing for that is very crystallizing for a lot of people.
I think so too. I mean, you've recorded over 600 audiobooks. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of books.
It's a lot of books.
Is there a book that you haven't recorded yet or that you want to record real bad?
There's so many. Oh, there's so many.
Like, give me 3. Pride and Prejudice.
Well, I recorded a chapter of Pride and Prejudice. It's actually for free in the Audiobrary app right now. You couldn't have teed me up better for that. Yeah. Because a friend started a spirits company called Literati Spirits, and her first line was a Lizzie and Darcy vodka set, and they're so good. They're so good. But I was like, I'm going to record a little Pride and Prejudice and put it in the app just for, my personal Jane Austen favorite is Persuasion, and I think I will do that at some point. I think I'm going to do it. But I mean, they're all my favorite books. Like, the book that made me a reader when I was a kid was The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. And I know an audio version already exists of that, but my God, I would love to do it. Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know if I could really bite off Middlemarch, but I would like to try. There's a lot of old romance that doesn't have audio versions that I would love to try to track down. I'm just not going to say them publicly because I don't want publishers to realize that they're sitting on audio rights and go do them themselves.
That's my girl. Yes, I like it. Trust me. Are you kidding me? I'm like, say nothing, make your coins. Yeah, I think it would be really, really fun to do an audiobook. And I can't imagine the exhaustion. That's kind of how I always felt about, voiceover actors who especially worked in animation, who I just thought, what a fun thing to do, because because I suffered a lot, just depends, here and there from stage fright. And so I can't imagine how fun it would be to act, but privately. But then
it's my literal dream. Like, this is the thing.
Then it being public.
Right. Like, this is the thing. Like, I love it so much. I get total creative control over everything. Like, I get to play all the parts. Like, I'm not a nightmare on set. Like, I'm very collaborative and I'm really good and I'm professional and I show up on time and I don't bump into the furniture and my lines are memorable. Like, I am A+ on camera workhorse. But having the ability to just control the entire situation in an audiobook is like my favorite thing. And that's what I mean by I've never been more suited for something in my life. This just was perfect.
Can I ask sort of a stupid question?
Sure.
Thank you for also
Can't
being
wait
like,
to
there
hear
are
it.
no stupid questions.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that.
There are dumb.
Yeah, there are
there
stupid
dumb
questions. Yeah.
And might be one of them. How come sometimes in audiobooks, like the ones you do will go, like even Britney Spears, why don't they bring in multiple, and I know they have done it, but why not why don't they bring in multiple actors? Like, if there's a male role, why won't they bring in that person all the time?
Not a stupid question. It's just that it's expensive. It's a lot of logistics and it's a lot of expense to do it right and to do it well. So the very first project that we did on Audiobrary was actually my third book. I kept it back and I didn't sell it because I wanted to use it to launch Audiobrary. And it's a very steamy romance that actually, okay, sorry, this is going off topic, but I will loop back to what you asked. My second book is called Thank You for Listening, and it is about two audiobook narrators who fall in love while recording a romance novel, but the hitch is they don't know who the other person is because they're both using aliases, right? So the book that they're recording in Thank You for Listening is called Casanova LLC. And I came up with like the jokiest, most ridiculous premise I could think of like, what is a romance novel that just sounds like it was designed in a lab? And it was this premise. And then it got super serious. I got super into the story and the characters, and it wouldn't let me go. So I decided to write it. But I did it as I wrote it in Thank You for Listening, which was as an 8-episode audio series. So that's how we launched Audiobrary, was with that project. And I did it as a duet multicast. And I will say this. I think it very much depends on the book. I think some books are made for it, like Daisy Jones and the Six, which is written like an oral history anyway, was made for it. It sounds like a podcast. It's amazing. And in this, I had mainly two main characters, a strong supporting third, and then like a cameo by a fourth. But that was it. There weren't a ton of other characters. There wasn't a lot. It was just a very small, like contained story, almost like a play. And so it worked really well.
Still sounds like a lot of people.
Yeah. So it sprawls is my point. And that all required coordination of like getting these very in-demand audiobook narrators together at a certain time so we could record it live, like through Zoom in our individual studios. And it's just, it's prohibitive. And then you're, of course, paying people, a premium because they're kind of on call.
Well, I mean, Daisy Jones and the Six you bring up, if I remember correctly, I mean, they also brought in tons of actors to do that audio. It was like Jennifer Beals.
Yeah.
Benjamin Bratt.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to that guy? Very random fun fact that's sort of insane. And I can't believe I'm saying this on this somewhat very adult interview. But I went out on a couple of dates a million years ago in San Francisco with this very hot guy who looked just like Benjamin Bratt. And then on our third date, he confessed to me that he was actually a porn star and his name was Benjamin Bratt, but with 3 T's. And that's why I'm a lesbian. Just kidding.
I am more interested to know where that Benjamin Bratt is than
you don't think I've Googled
Benjamin
it?
Bratt. Yeah, okay.
You don't think I've Googled it?
Okay.
Of course. I also there's something very strange within, I've had a very colorful life. And so I will think of people like Benjamin Bratt in moments like this. And I'm like, where is Benjamin Bratt? Oh, and he also had a girlfriend at the same time. It was like this horrible dinner where he's like, I was like, you never really talk about what you do for work. He's like, well, I am an adult film star. And I'm like, what? And he's like, and my name is Benjamin Bratt. And I was like, that's insane. He's like, and I'm polyamorous and I have a girlfriend. And I'm like, oh my God.
See,
San Francisco.
Maybe, and back then, I guess we just there weren't like rules of engagement for this sort of stuff. Now I feel like they probably have like a checklist of like, here's what I need to present on the first date.
Oh, God.
To like make sure it's totally consensual and we're all on the same page and everybody's fifis are being taken care of. Sorry. See, this is 2 geriatric millennials right here being like, these kids with their feelings.
Oh, don't worry about it. I mean, talk about stage fright. I did this huge interview this weekend in front of like all these Gen Z people. I've never felt older in my entire life. I was just saying the dumbest stuff the whole time. And I had a
realization the other day. They're finally getting around to making a movie of my Oxford year. It's been in the works for a very long time, and they're finally doing it. And they cast Sophia Carson and Corey Milcreast, who was in the Queen Charlotte Bridgerton spinoff. And so and all of the fans were like losing their mind because they love him. And objectively, I think he really is perfect for this. But I then had this moment where I was like, oh my God, when I started working on this project, that kid was 15. He was 15 when I started working on this story. That is just...
Well, don't worry about it. Somebody said one of these people this weekend, this very famous podcaster that I interviewed, she was very sweet, I have to tell you. But she said, oh my God, like they're like so old. They were born in like 1989. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm like, all right, well, anyway, so I'm going to go drown myself in the LA River, which is only 2 inches high at the present.
Like a turkey. We're doing a little turkey drowning.
Just like go jump in the Seine and get, scurvy or whatever those poor Olympians got. Is there anything that you think is going to happen within the audio world? Like, you mentioned articles being read, which I love, actually. And it's also really great because it helps so many different folks that might have they are legally blind or they can't, reading is difficult for them. And it really like gives access to content to so many other people. But do you think, is there a new wave of audio that we don't know about yet? Or do you see something that could happen?
I mean, yeah, number one bearing down on all of us is synthetic voice. AI
that's
voice,
so
text-to-speech.
wild.
And a lot of those articles now, this company that I helped build is, switching to synthetic voice. And I think, look, there's the part of me that laments that. And obviously, again, from a labor perspective, really sucks for people who have built a career in this and the work is drying up. And then the other part of me is like, there's a lot of books that don't get audio treatment because they're too expensive to make. I think my hope, though, and this is what I'm betting. Look, I'm betting on human storytelling with Audiobrary. That is not, everyone else is running in that direction. And I'm like, well, I think I'm going to hang back here and like bet on this thing that has been around since human beings started gathering around campfires, telling each other stories. Like, I'm going to put my money on that one. And it's really because I think I will totally accept that the AI voice is going to get so good that you can't tell the difference. But I think you will still know the difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think, again, that's where talking directly to fans and to consumers makes the point. Like, would you like to support human storytellers with your human money? Or would you just like to support the corporations that are turning these things around and charging you for them when it costs them basically nothing to do? And I again, maybe this is optimistic, but I think that human storytelling actually will be elevated compared to AI because now people can compare and contrast. There's two different products now. And I think my hope is that it actually elevates human storytelling and gives us more visibility because it's an art. It's a human art form.
I mean, I couldn't have said it better. I mean, there are so many people that you can just find them at a cocktail party and hold up in a corner and they're just making you can have two people tell the same story, but one person, you know what I mean, has got you in stitches and the other person you're like,
yeah. And I just think there are certain,
tequila.
Texts that it's like the journalism stuff. Sure. I think an article, can be read by synthetic. I mean, look, people are already putting their articles through Alexa and having Alexa read it to them. Like most people are just like, I'm just here for the information. I think, again, if I'm a journalist, I want a human brain recording and telling my very human writing. But, there's certain places where I understand it more. But in fiction that requires empathy and some kind of strategy for how you're going to lay this book out for the reader that requires emotional accessibility, these are things that it will never have. It will just be mimicking it. And so I don't know if that answered your question and that I don't know what is next. For me, I want to double down on the stuff I really care about, which is human storytelling.
No, you answered it perfectly.
Okay, great.
Also, I could just listen to your sweet little baby buttery voice forever. I'm like, read me all my bills. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Like, then you'll hate it. Then you'll have a negative association with it.
True. Julia, you are a gem. I hope I really warmed up your voice this morning.
You did. Thank you. I can go record now.